Working with folks for close to 40 years now and trying to help them to heal from their past and to get what's in them out of them. I'm a relationship and life coach, coaching people in self-differentiation based on a family systems approach, a Murray Bowen family systems approach. And today I'd like to share with you an accounting of someone who shared their story with me, and they gave me permission to share it, though it is anonymous. Names are changed and situations are changed just a little bit so that we wouldn't identify her, though I don't know that she would really even matter or she would even care all that much, but I care. It's a story she's blessed me with being able to share with you. I had done a video on healing the pain of growing up in which I shared a story about Amelia, and she shared her story of pain growing up, which triggered this person who wanted to share with me her story. And it, of course, is a very painful one. Let me grab my glasses real quick. Sorry. We're going to call her Joanne. Joanne grew up in a family that was alcoholic and had a narcissistic mother, which was very painful for her. This recounting is a recounting when she was 6 years old. And if you can imagine a 6-year-old going through this, how difficult that would have been and how painful, horribly painful it would be. The reason I want to share this is so that, number one, you don't feel alone, because many of us have experienced uncomfortable childhoods, difficult, painful, traumatic childhoods, and that you're not alone, and that there is help and healing for that if we choose recovery. And getting someone who can coach us towards self-differentiation, getting that out of us so that we can truly be an adult. She begins, after listening to the pain and loneliness that Amelia experienced growing up, a paralyzing fear of pain and loneliness began to well up from somewhere deep within me that I did not remember existed. I felt trapped in a place I had forgotten about. My mind turned to mush, and I was in a fog that I had not experienced for quite some time. Now that my mother had been gone for over a year, I had no idea this pain was still brewing deep within. I felt blindsided, and I experienced fear and loneliness again, like I had so long ago. I began to realize that the very last time I felt any kind of unconditional love and acceptance from a family member in my childhood home was when my sister Anne left for college. I'm the last of 5 children, and I was the unexpected child, which is nothing unusual, for there are many unexpected children. But for my mother, it was at the age of 42 that she had me. My mother had 3 girls and then had a long anticipated boy that arrived. She was done, in her mind, having children. 6 years later, I was born. I have but one warm and tender memory of my mother soothing and holding me. She never kissed me unless I initiated it. The words "I love you" were very few and far between, and again I had to initiate it. The words, I have memories of my sister Anne when I was 6, when she left home. I remember being with her everywhere she went. I realize now it was because her countenance was warm and accepting. She was fun-loving and has a positive demeanor, even to this day. Anne Anne was the closest thing to a mom in my early childhood home. We shared the same bedroom. We had twin beds, but often when I had a bad dream or I was just scared of the dark, I would slip into her bed and she never complained. She would help me feel that I was safe and okay in the dark. The dark was very, very scary for me. And when I needed to go downstairs to the bathroom, I would wake her and she would take me without complaint. I felt so safe and secure with her by my side. I felt loved and accepted in my needs and wants. She was the one I remember. I do not remember my mother or my brother, who was just 6 years older than me. Anne was my caregiver and my sibling who loved me. After she left home for college, my world would change in many ways that I never imagined possible. My security, my protection, my comfort drastically changed. I seemed to become invisible to everyone in my household. The only attention I seemed to attract was especially from my mother. And it was negative attention almost all the time. My brother hated me. I was an object to him, to do with me what he wanted in the moment. He would tell me over and over what a dumb, stupid person I was and that nobody would ever like or want to know me. He would try to convince me that my brother-in-law did not like little girls who cried. I believed him. I was scared of my brother-in-law and tried very hard not to cry in front of anyone. I still have a hard time crying and showing my emotions even today. As we grew older, my brother was just always so angry. He would beat on me and treat me cruelly when my parents were out. I was scared of him and did not want to be left alone with him. My mother would not believe me when I would tell her what he would do when they were not around. She would say, "I don't see any bruises. You're just so dramatic. Why are you always causing trouble?" I remember still to this day the first few nights sleeping alone in my bedroom after Anne left home. My bedroom seemed so big now, and I was afraid. I needed to go downstairs to the bathroom. I turned on every light as I made my way down the stairs. I made it, but I just wanted someone to hold me and tell me it was going to be okay. I was sad my sister was gone. I was sad and lonely in this new environment without my sis. I was scared. I needed my mom. I knocked on my mom and dad's bedroom door. I remember feeling extremely anxious. I said, "Mommy, I am scared. Can I sleep in here?" My mother wakes up and looks at me in her stern and demeaning voice, and she says, "Scared? What do you mean you're scared? There's nothing to be scared about. You're not sleeping in here. Go to your room." I ran out of there as fast as I could, crying, frightened, and shutting all the lights off as I went. I jumped into Anne's bed and I cried and I cried and I cried. "Anne, I need you. I'm scared. Mommy hates me. Anne, please come back home. I need Mommy. I need you. I do not belong here in this house. I do not like it here. I feel so alone, so lost, so unworthy to be loved. There's something wrong with me. My mom and my brother seem to hate me. I'm always doing something wrong. No one protects me. My dad is numbed out, disconnected, and is not responsible or responsive. he cannot be the man of the household. His coping skills are lacking, and alcohol is a part of his coping. My parents just seem to vegetate in our home. There is no love, no connection, no happiness, no joy, no laughter, no snuggles, no kisses. It is either chaotic or it's stone cold quiet. Anne, you showed me love and acceptance, and when you left, all that ended in my 6-year-old world. Everything continued in a downward spiral. I did not know then what I know now. My mom and dad's marriage was in a downward spiral, and my dad's drinking began to be more and more out of control during my teenage years. This is when loneliness began to be my friend. It was not a welcome friend. I would watch other children and they would seem happy, unlike me. Their mothers would be so proud of them. They would smile and hug and kiss them. I would think, they must be doing it right, unlike me. I have to figure this out. I have to change. I have to be good, perfectly good, loving and perfectly loving, and do everything my mom tells me in the most meticulous way. It was no use. It always failed. Loneliness was excruciating. I felt so alone and unworthy in this world. How could anyone love me? I began not to love me. I hated my very self. In my mom's eyes, nothing I did was good enough. If I did do something well, then she would bring it down by dumping all her pity and laying on the guilt trip of how she was never able to do such things. She never was allowed to go to college. She was never allowed to work outside the home. She would tell everyone how she had encouraged me to do more, resulting in all of my accomplishments, as a narcissistic mom would. She would not tell us how proud she was of us. That would produce a prideful attitude in us. It seemed to her that the feelings of worth were to be sacrificed. It was hopeless. It was useless. And I gave up. I gave up ever trying to be someone, to be me, to be Joanne. This is a painful story told from a 6-year-old's perspective of what was going on in her life. I know Joanne is not alone. There are many who have many, many stories like this. So what can Joanne do to get her childhood out of her, to resolve, to heal, to deal with these feelings that were so difficult for her growing up? Well, first of all, I think of going back in time, journaling, writing about events that happened, putting it down on paper, seeing it in black and white, affirms truly what was going on at the time and how you felt. It makes it become more real rather than someone just saying, no, that never happened, or no, you're just exaggerating, no, that's not true. So go back in time and make a record of what had happened. Read it through. Another thing that we can do is begin to, if we aren't in touch with that, we can begin to, if we're not in touch with our feelings about this type of journaling, We can think about our own children, if we have children, and think about them being at 6 years old and they are experiencing this, or you're doing that to them. How would they feel? How would your little 6-year-old, that's your own child, feel about being treated this way? And that begins to give us some connection to the feelings as to how that might feel. We can also use this journaling to begin to expel it from ourselves. And with Joanne in particularly, she lives in a rural area and out on the farm, and so she can go out into the field where no one's listening, no one cares, nobody's going to hear her, and she reads this. And I would suggest reading it in another voice than your own normal adult voice. Read it in a different voice. Either a low, after listening to the pain and loneliness that Amelia experienced growing up, you can read it in a different voice. Or you can read it, my brother hated me. I was an object to him to do with what he wanted in the moment. And we read it with such intensity and such emotional expression. And we do that, and do it a dozen times. Read it in that expressive, angry, or traumatized voice so that it can come out and so that it can be expressed. We also can take a look at this journaling and how do I play this out in my role as an adult? How am I living this way in my life now? The lonely, uncared about, unloved, worthless. How is that getting played out in my marriage, in my family? And identify that so that we can begin to change those behaviors in the here and now. I always advise clients to, when you are in living your life, that you would tend to feel less and observe more, or feel less and think more. Not because I wish to discount the feelings. The feelings are so intense, they're there, and that's why if we're reading it very intensely and owning and accepting those feelings. But then as we're living, we want to be careful not to get caught in those, what I call systems feelings. And then we end up reacting and being an adult out of those feelings. So we want to think more, observe more, and feel less, and absorb less from interacting with others. And also, we don't want to argue out of reactive or systems feelings. We don't want to argue out of this whole journaling that I've just read to you, that's within us, and argue with our spouse, or argue with our parents, or argue with our siblings. And I would recommend the video on true feelings versus systems feelings, and that might help you also further. I have another video entitled that. Don't feel like you have to protect the integrity of others. Meaning, if someone was wrong, such as parents, and they were wrong, and it's not about blaming them, it's about fully accepting that they were wrong and this was wrong in what they did. I realize in Joanne's case, her mother and her parents had very bad childhoods. They were abused, they were mistreated. So I understand that it's a multi-generational problem that just keeps flowing down the generations. And so it's not about blaming them, it's about I don't have to protect their integrity when I'm doing this work. Certainly don't work it out with your perpetrator. Don't work it out with your mom and dad. Don't work it out with your sister and brother, because these are old archaeological feelings. We don't work those out now with them. we learn to be an adult with them. Because we don't need to work it out with them, we need to work it out within us. Oftentimes when we tried to work it out with them, we end up making things worse, or it becomes more intense, or they don't know what we're talking about, or they're still in denial, or all kinds of issues in that way. So we're looking for them to change or be sympathetic or empathetic, and probably they won't be empathetic or caring at that point, because they may feel their own shame, they may feel their own guilt. Now, certainly, if they're coming to you and say, I'm so sorry for what I did, I'd like to talk with you about that, well, then you're free to do that. But we don't use them as a way to get that out of us. We use them as a way to be an adult with them. How can I be an adult with these individuals? And again, we want to be our age. We want to act our age when we interact with these folks, our parents, our siblings. And we don't have to live in denial about it. We certainly say, no, that's not exactly the childhood I remember. That's not the way I felt it. Well, aren't you just blaming me? No, I'm just saying that's not the way I remember it. And no, I don't have to blame you. It's not the way it was for me. You can remember it any way you want to remember it. I remember it the way I remember it. So these are a few tips you can use. There are more. I wanted to share this experience with you today, and I wanted to share Joanne's experience of her 6-year-old little girl having a traumatic experience and how she can work on that as an adult. I want to share with you that if you need further help, or you'd like resources, or you'd like to contact me, use my email address. You can go to my website, www.jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com. You can sign up for our email address. You can go to the Facebook page of the same name. And I hope those resources will be a help to you. I really want to thank you today for listening, and have a great day. Hi everyone, my name is Jerry Wise, and I've been a life and relationship coach for many years. I've also served as a therapist, a social worker, in a psychiatric practice, chemical dependency treatment, and been a pastor and many other things in my life. And now I'm helping people with life and relationship coaching using the Bowen Family Systems model of helping people learning to self-differentiate. And I hope that you will join my YouTube membership that we have now. We have memberships on my website. We have memberships on YouTube now. And we're going to be doing more on YouTube, and even doing some live programs streaming on YouTube and Facebook. So we should be doing that soon, and we'll be notifying you when that's going to be happening. Again, it doesn't cost very much to be a member, a couple of dollars on YouTube, and it sure helps for the production of the videos and things such as that. And there are other benefits you get with being a member. I work with adult children of alcoholics. I work with adult children of narcissists, other adult children issues, codependents, family problems, business organizational problems, executive coaching, career coaching, and life coaching as well. I've done many things in these 40 years. This program is entitled 5 Things Codependents Miss in Their Recovery. I've been a recovering codependent for many years, since the early 80s, maybe even the late 70s. So that tells you kind of how long I've been around. And I'm a very strong supporter of the 12-step program, of CODA, Codependents Anonymous. I've done workshops on codependency. I've run therapy groups for codependents for many years. So I've literally worked with thousands of codependents over my career. And after doing this work, I'm aware of at least 5 things that are not taught or are overlooked in the recovery programs that people have been practicing and in their own personal recovery work. And certainly I was lacking these things as well. And today I wanted to discuss 5 of them. There are probably more, but at least I want to discuss a major 5 of them. The first is growing yourself up. Having been in recovery many decades ago, I understood how I should see my codependency as a problem and that it was something I should stop. I didn't want to be a codependent. I knew that was a problem. I became aware of it, came out of denial, and I was looking for tools and for techniques and methods to stop being codependent. I knew inner child work was important and that doing some inner work on me would be healing and would be recommended early on when I was in my beginnings of my recovery. In fact, I did a whole workshop on the 3 stages of recovery for ACOAs and codependents, and actually I'm kind of talking about the 3rd stage of that without going into all of those things, but it's the 3rd stage that I think so often gets missed in a recovery program. There were a couple of things missing from what I read and researched. How do I change my immature paradigm? How do I move from the primary task of stopping my codependency to maturing and growing up inside, becoming more detached, becoming more of an adult, and in some ways becoming more normal and healthy? And insight, research, group support, and even therapy seem to miss some of these important dynamics. And how do I change how I see the world, my emotional field and my emotional functioning, my family and how my relationships work? How do I change my subjectivity, how I know and see things? Not just what I see, but how I process it and how I see it. And that's what I was very interested in. And I didn't find a lot of information about that. And one of the key things that I think is important to remember is the emotional field and the emotional awareness that you have and how you see the world will define your recovery process. Well, if that is limited, then it may limit your recovery program and limit how far you can go in your recovery. It certainly was limiting mine. And I was trying all different kinds of things. Most of us can imagine our recovery will fit our model of awareness and understanding of relationships and ourselves. If we come from a dysfunctional home, often our recovery is dysfunctional. That's not so amazing. If we're broken, we often will have a broken recovery. And most people think, well, I just recover and then I'm not broken and then all the world's open. And I didn't find that to be the case. That I would use what I got and have been given throughout the generations to me and use that as the box of my recovery. So I could make progress, but it still was kind of within that box. I wanted to change the box. And I was looking, how can you do that? There were a couple of things missing from what I read and researched. How do I change my immature paradigm? How do I move from a primary task of stopping my codependency to maturity and growing up? As most of us can imagine, our recovery will fit into our model of awareness and understanding of relationships and ourselves. For example, many of you have been to meetings. I would imagine there's a lot of people that's been to AA meetings, Al-Anon meetings, codependency, recovery meetings, ACOA meetings. There are even a few narcissistic abuse meetings, adult children of narcissists. And when you go to these meetings, it seems like there are many participants who are stuck in recycling. Often they don't appear to be growing up, or in many ways not recovering. Now they believe they are. Well, within their box, they believe they are. And we look at it and go, well, why are they just so immature? And they've been going here 5 years and they don't seem like they've progressed hardly at all. I'm not judging other people. I know how difficult that can be. It's not about a judgment. It was about awareness I had. And I'm going, if you've been in recovery for 20 years, and you haven't grown up yet, you've learned a lot about recovery, and that's good, but you haven't really grown up. You don't really see certain relationships in a certain way, and your paradigm's still kind of stuck on what your family of origin had. It's kind of like, have you really done all that you can do in your recovery? And some would say, well, they're just not following the program, the 12-step program enough. If you just follow it more or do it more. But they believe they are, that they are recovering, but they're using their distorted, immature, dysfunctional family model to judge their recovery. And that's what we did. And that's what I did. I used that model that I had within me to judge how I was doing, but I wasn't able to grow past that. Their recovery model is driven by the unresolved family of origin issues. Their recovery is often limited by these issues as well. And again, I'm not putting anybody down. I was there. I understand that. I'm still there. I'm still growing. I haven't become perfect by any means, or perfect in recovery, but I don't know if any of you have had that awareness, but that was kind of my awareness. I thought, what's the limitation here? A growing up model helps us to see self-awareness, self-definition, and self-regulation as the goal versus just pinging back and forth of our recycling. That's us stuck in this little box. Rather than gaining self-awareness, gaining self-differentiation, and gaining a systems thinking or self-regulation. I came out of denial early in my recovery. I was offered hope and healing from the past hurts and over-functioning behavior that we as codependents will often do, and the fear and the shame and the guilt. All those things were present. And I even learned to do some self-care, which was absolutely critical to my recovery. But I think of that as stage 1 and moving into stage 2. Nobody told me about a stage 3. But it did not offer a way for me to learn to self-differentiate within the system. See things in a systems way. See my part in relationship systems. See their part in my relationship systems. And to grow up beyond an introduction to codependency books and 12-step programs, which again, I'm a strong fan of and encourage for people. We can only grow as mature as our box or paradigm will allow. And I didn't know there was that delimiting factor or limiting factor. I didn't know that I can't know what I don't know. And so I wanted to learn, how do I learn what I don't know? And I'm going to tell you how that began. I wanted to change or expand my box. There seemed to be little help out there until I found a family systems approach or a Bowen family systems approach to help me. Oh, this is what maturity is all about. This is what growing up's all about. This is the work of self-differentiation. Well, no one ever said that to me in the recovery community. None of the books even talked about that. If any, they just touched on it lightly. Secondly, a thing I believe that's often missed in codependency recovery is understanding systems feelings. I believe the conventional wisdom is this. All feelings are equal and should be valued all the same. Whatever feelings are just feelings. You don't make them happen. They just are. Just let them be, and they're all equal. And that's kind of what I thought. And that we should treat them all the same way. If I feel guilt, then I should try to overcome it or get rid of it. If I feel abandoned, I should love myself and not feel this way. If I feel shame, I should do shame recovery so that those feelings won't keep coming. If I feel hurt or rejected, I should just realize I'm not being rejected. And then, or if I am being rejected, to just ignore that. I should simply forgive myself and these emotions would not be there. Well, the difficulty was they just continued to be there, and I continued to recycle. I continued to have reactivity that I thought, this is not changing it. I am doing better, and I'm doing much better than when I was in denial of codependency, but it wasn't the progress I was hoping to make. In my early recovery for codependency, I did not see how relationship systems caused feelings or triggered these feelings in me. I assumed that they were just my deep, unhealed emotions. I thought of them outside the relationship system, not actually living inside the relationship system. I did not even see these things in terms of systems or how they operate emotionally. And so some advice was, well, you need self-understanding. You need to see yourself as common humanity, that we all feel the same. We all have feelings. We all have guilt. We all have abandonment. We all have... and some will talk about, well, you need to earn your forgiveness, taking responsibility, apologizing and making amends, asking for forgiveness from your higher power, just do better, just have self-compassion. And again, all of these are correct. They're not wrong, but they leave out a systems paradigm and a systems element. Also, I didn't read anywhere, for example, in which someone was writing, when you feel guilt, there's true guilt, family guilt, societal guilt, spiritual guilt, and false guilt. I used to teach all of these types of guilts when I did pastoral counseling workshops. And, because everybody felt, well, if I just feel guilty, it must be God, it must be me, and that every feeling is equal of value, so I have guilt and I need to resolve it somehow. But false guilt is really common. And no one even mentioned on here systems guilt, and I had no understanding of systems guilt. If you get a better understanding of that, you can get a different reframe and a different framework. It starts to change the box that we're in. There are true feelings and there are systems feelings. Systems feelings began long ago in our family of origin growing up, but they also reoccur in our adult relationships. They are feelings we have to maintain. There are feelings that we have to maintain the equilibrium, status quo, homeostasis of the relationship system, and that we have adopted growing up and were bequeathed to us. I will give you an example. Let's say Dad's a narcissist. He makes unrealistic demands and has for years. He expects me to feel guilty when he is displeased, so that I will continue in the role of subservience, and beholding to him as my father. When I feel this guilt, is it true guilt? Is that true guilt? No, it's a false guilt. No, it's a guilt that is to be experienced by me to keep the system or the relationship balanced and not to disturb it. In other words, he does this, I feel guilty, I get reactive or whatever I do, and that keeps the status quo of the relationship. It doesn't change. And so that's how that works. And I'm supposed to have that guilt because the guilt plays a role in our relationship. It's not just something that comes up with me apart from him. It plays a role in our relationship, and I want to know what that role is. These feelings are not true feelings. They are symptomatic or systems feelings built into the relationship system to keep the status quo. A husband says, well, you're just too sensitive, to his wife. And then the wife feels guilty for being so sensitive. And it keeps the wife controlled so they don't question my sensitiveness and not stand up for myself. So I just feel guilty, or I just feel hurt or rejected, and then I don't do these other things in the relationship, because that keeps the relationship in the same patterns that it's supposed to stay in. This keeps him in his place, me in my place, or her in her place in the relationship system. I believe a systems understanding of feelings is especially important for later codependent recovery, even earlier codependent recovery. And then thirdly, and by the way, I have 5 that I wanted to share today. Thirdly is the pendulum life. Nobody really described that for me or helped me to understand the pendulum life. And I have a video on that. I have a video on systems feelings. I have a video on all the topics that I talk about. But that pendulum life is the experience of going back and forth between either making peace and reactive distancing or resentment to gain some distance because we feel caught in our codependency. So we might be over here in compliance, over-functioning, peacemaking, and then we'll slip over here to resentment, hurt, reactivity, and we'll go to 180 degrees. Well, if 0 is sick, 180 degrees is still sick. What we want is the 90-degree mark. That's what's maturity and healthy. And nobody ever really kind of explained that to me. I would just swing back and forth and say, well, I'm making progress. I'm moving, but I just keep moving back and forth. And so that's the recycling that we will do. This idea keeps codependents on the treadmill of recycling over and over again, bouncing between enmeshment and cutoff or avoidance, even tricking us into thinking we are making progress versus really we're just swinging from fusion from peacemaking to enmeshment and fusion to distancing and avoiding. Both are fusion, both are enmeshment, both are codependent. They just are different sides of the same coin. Just like when I say and ask people, what is the opposite of love? And people will say, hate. And I go, oh, no. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is neutrality, or I don't care. Hate is a part of connectedness. It is a moving toward someone. Love is connectedness and moving toward someone. And so the opposite of that is not hate. That's just the other side. Just like in a marriage, we get married, then we get divorced, and then all of a sudden they hate each other. They're still married emotionally because they hate each other. They were married when they love each other. They're married when they hate each other. And that's an incomplete divorce healing when you do that. And then you have this hate, which we think, oh, well, I'm not connected to them anymore because I hate them. Then you marry somebody else. Now you have the flip side of love for the coin of the first marriage, and you're taking that into the second marriage. And then guess what? 97% of second marriages fail. So that's where a problem comes because we're just penduluming. Not a word, but I'll make it up. When I was in the early stages of recovery, I thought there was only giving in or being resentful and upset, or peacemaking and distancing, or trying to get closer, then cutting off when it did not happen or I felt hurt. I only saw 2 options, A or B. A, get closer, B, get reactive. And then I would move away emotionally. I didn't know there was a C option. Nobody talked about that. But in systems thinking, that when you see it in systems world, systems thinking, you understand the C option. And so I only lived the pendulum life, not the 90-degree life, as my friend Carol talks about, being myself while remaining connected, which is really grown up, and that's not easy. A self-differentiated option with detachment and connectedness. Detachment and connectedness. Not too much togetherness, not too much separateness. A 90-degree of togetherness and separateness in those two forces. And again, Family Systems talks about those two forces. Fourthly, let me talk about what also may be missed in a codependency recovery is real detachment with a family systems approach. The 12-step books, 12-step groups, you will hear the word detachment. I hear it lots of places, and that it's a good thing that you should do that. I didn't find anybody who could really help me with that. Okay, well, how do I do that? In fact, I went on, looked through all the material on how do you detach, and it was like, get a pet, get on with your life. Release, let go. I was trying to think about, it was just like, okay, those are all good things to do, to be detached. Don't obsess about them. Don't, move forward, look forward, let go, forgive, don't obsess, release, start living your own life, live one decision at a time. Notice how you feel unloved. These are all good things, but they're not with a systems understanding. But they're all good things, and I'm not against any of them. And in fact, I found 20 of them and 20 advice for how to detach. And one of them is fairly powerful, learning how to forgive yourself and learning how to forgive them. Forgiveness is a letting go. So that really is a practice that I think can help with detachment. But I think there's a lot more we can do to detach. And how easy it's to, well, just stop worrying about what they're doing. Well, okay, I'll just stop worrying about what they're doing as I keep worrying about what they're doing, and it's like, And then they do ask the question, consider why are you still attached in order to emotionally detach. And that's good, but they don't give very much information about why might I be attached. They don't tell you much about that. They say, oh, well, maybe you're just attached because you have some guilt. And I think we are attached and able to not get detached because of many other things and deeper things and even historic things or family of origin things. So the ways to detach in my thinking, which I didn't read and haven't seen out there, learn systems thinking. Nobody ever told me to do that. Learn about self-differentiation. See how you are stuck or attached in your family of origin or triangulated. Do 12-step work, which is very important. And the reason why it works is because it's a paradoxical approach. And it's the inside-out approach. In other words, surrender to gain empowerment. And that's paradoxical. And that's why it's so healing. It almost has a systems wisdom behind it. And that's why it's so effective. Because we're giving up to get and to be ourselves. Working towards inner neutrality by growing yourself up, moving from that inner I don't care, from an immature I don't care. Because so many people will say, oh, well, I just need to not care. Well, I don't care about that SOB. I don't care about them. Wait a minute. Are you just saying you don't care, or do you really not care? Because if you really don't care, you probably wouldn't even be mentioning him or her. Because we're still connected. And when people come to me and they're still angry with their ex and still have lots of feelings with their ex, how ready are they for a new relationship? because they haven't let go. They haven't gotten to a neutrality or an I don't care place. Becoming aware of systems feelings, learning to see that there are system feelings that affect us, and how do we look at those as system feelings, and what do we do about those? Breaking the family trance, breaking the relationship trance, grieving the loss. That's another thing that is taught out in the recovery community, and grieving is a way of changing that box and changing that paradigm. Grieving is definitely a way. And then there's paradoxical moves, like moving into the symptom or the problem, moving towards it rather than away from it. We're always trying to move away from our problems, and sometimes we need to move toward it. For example, if I feel I am worthless, and then somebody comes to me and says, Jerry, I want you to help me to not feel worthless about myself. Okay, tell me how to do that. And then I tell them, well, it's not a how question, it's a when question. And that if you wanted to know how to do it, okay, I'll show you. Then I want you to write, I am not ready to accept that I am not worthless. And they go, well, I don't, why are you telling me to do that? You're just going to reinforce the worthlessness. No. And I'm saying you're already reinforcing the worthlessness by trying to just reject that part of you. Accept that part of you, which is paradoxical, so it can go away. And that's the paradoxical nature of like systems help. So that's going into the symptom rather than just always running from it and trying to fix it. You may want to accept your way out of it. Because if you say that 1,000 times, by the time you get done saying that, which I had them write it down, they're going, where did it go? I don't feel that way anymore. They accepted their way through it. Fifthly, the fifth often thing is missed in a recovery program, I believe, is self-regulation. The recovery community does talk about self-regulation. Do this, don't do that. But what I feel gets left out is this self in the system regulation awareness and mastery and aptitude. It's not just self, but self in the system. And that's what I wasn't getting in the recovery literature and in the recovery books. I was aware of the goal, but I felt I only had half the tools. I had an individualistic perspective, just me alone, but lacked the system's perspective. Though I did not know this, I just knew in my paradigm, I just wasn't growing up far enough or healing more on an unconscious or reactive level. I wasn't as different as I thought I would be. I didn't see how I was caught in many relationship systems, and they all had simultaneous effects on me at all times. If you don't see yourself that way, you're going to be blinded in some ways. Now, you can feel kind of overwhelmed at first, but after you begin to learn systems thinking and systems awareness, and if you write to me, I can certainly send you the books about family systems and systems awareness, that once you get into that mode, you can maneuver so much more with much more clarity and much more maturity. I thought my family of our origin just troubles me by how they act towards me or in the present even, versus they are in me and I am operating with them in me in the present. Now that's a whole different systems way of thinking about them. My elementary recovery and early self-regulation were not informed by systems feelings, systems anxiety, relationship patterns as a system. I would move from being a victim of others to trying to control others, all in an attempt to control my reactivity and my anxiety, fear, and hurt. while missing my own self regulation. Our codependency leaves us in an I'm being controlled mode or I need to control others mode. And even though that may get better, that paradigm just still stays there, even as we improve as codependents. And these modes will limit our self-regulation work. Well, I know I've talked your ear off today, and I wanted to share these 5 things with you. I hope you will follow me on YouTube and subscribe with the YouTube subscription button. Join a membership there. It doesn't cost very much at all. My podcasts are on all the major streaming apps. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can also join the silver or gold plan on my website, jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com, and join a monthly call that I have with those members who want to join me on that call, and I answer questions of members who have joined. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope you have a great day, and be wise. In this video, we're talking about how to become the adult your narcissistic family never let you become, what they blocked, how it still shows up in your life today, and what you can do to start living as your real self. I'm Jerry Wise, and for over 45 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of people heal and get their families out of them by practicing self-differentiation, the process of becoming your true self and releasing the false self you were trained to be in your family of origin, so that you can finally experience clarity, peace, and lasting freedom. Step number 1, owning your own emotions instead of managing everyone else's. Growing up in your narcissistic family ran on an unspoken rule their emotional state was your responsibility. When your narcissistic parent was angry, you learned to fix it. When they were upset, you learned to manage it. Your emotional energy went entirely outward, always scanning, always adjusting, always trying to keep the temperature in the room at a safe level. That's a job no child should have been given. Today, you find yourself doing the same thing in every relationship. You read the room before you read yourself. You know exactly what everyone else is feeling, but when someone asks how you're doing, you just go blank. Becoming the adult they never let you be started with one shift: letting other people's emotions belong to them. In addition, we don't want to abide by the rule that I make you feel and you make me feel. It's not a make you feel. If you feel, you're making you feel. And there are many things I discuss in the Road to Self program to help you understand that even more clearly. I even like the book Inner Bonding by Dr. Margaret Paul, and she has a good discussion about your feelings and how we don't make other people feel what they're feeling. Do we affect each other? Of course we do, but that's not the same thing as making them feel. You are not responsible for how others feel. You never were. This is what I call moving from other-focused to self-focused. Just finally taking your hands off the emotional burdens that were never yours to carry. Step number 2, trusting your own perception. In your narcissistic family, your version of reality wasn't allowed to exist. When you saw something clearly, a lie, a manipulation, an injustice, you were told you were too sensitive or making things up. Gaslighting was the air you breathed when you were growing up. You learned to abandon your own self-perception before anyone else could dismiss it, because it hurt less to doubt yourself first. Again, it hurt less if I doubt myself first. Here's what that created in you as an adult. You no longer need your narcissistic family to dismiss your reality. You do it yourself before anyone else gets the chance. You second guess what you saw. You talk yourself out of what you felt. You rewrite your own experience in real time and to make it more pleasant for other people. You are allowed to trust what you see. Let me share that again. You are allowed to trust what you see, what you experience, what you feel, what you think. That doesn't mean we're always accurate and there's no distortion, but you have to grow, and to learn that, you have to begin to trust you. Then you will get clearer on thoughts, feelings, actions, beliefs, and that will happen as you grow. But if you don't start trusting yourself, we never really learn to be an adult. It's like a teenager who doesn't eventually learn to trust themselves. How's that going to help them be an adult? We felt very insecure in junior high or grade school, and we didn't trust ourselves, and we were always, am I okay? Am I okay? And that once we begin to say, well, I need to start trusting myself so I can learn myself about reality, perceptions, etc. When something feels wrong, that feeling is information. Your perception deserves to be taken seriously, especially by you. Your reality was real then, and it's real now. Now, I might say, does that mean I never doubt myself? Well, of course I do. I'm human like everybody else, and I learned to doubt myself very strongly. But doubting myself is a little bit of a check to make sure it's not distorted, to make sure it's not, but that's not a dismissing of what I'm feeling and thinking and experiencing, because my perception is probably generally accurate. It may have some other neurotic issues connected to it. I mean, it's possible, or can happen even often, but I don't dismiss my whole perception and just let others define